control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic. We are host Mark. Today we are talking about a rather unusual anthology show called The Vow. And it's unusual because it never actually aired. It was a 12 episode show. Well, I say that. There was 11 episodes, and I'll say that again. There was actually 10 in the original run because the first one, the pilot, was actually a backdoor for another show. And then there was 10 originally made for the rest of the series, and then an extra one was bolted on by a different studio. So yeah, it's kind of a sort of a bit of a mongrel, this one. Now, actually, I watched the first episode and it was rather good. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. It's hosted by Boris Karloff, who does appear in all the episodes apart from the final one, which, as I mentioned, was made by another studio. And that one's called Jack the Ripper, so that's probably the most interesting one of all, just from the title. However, he did present and appear as a character in each of the other stories. The first one, the one I watched, is, as I say, a backdoor pilot that actually was aired on another anthology show on ABC called Telephone Time, a sort of more standard drama series. But this one had a touch of the supernatural about it. It was... I was going to watch the original first episode, which is called Vision of Crime, but I decided to go with this pilot. Why not? I'm kind of covering two anthology series by doing that. Telephone Time, which I wouldn't usually cover because it's a drama rather than mystery or crime or supernatural or whatever, science fiction. But yeah, it's okay. Now, I'm also glad I covered it because there was some quite there was an interesting actor who I haven't seen in a long time who I want to give a bit of a shout out to. It first aired, apparently, it did air as part of Telephone Time on the 25th of February 1958. Now, the rest of the series never aired. And it is often billed as the greatest TV series never shown. That's kind of how it's described. Okay. That's one way of selling it. So, it wasn't actually available to anyone until it was released on DVD many decades after it was supposed to air. Apparently, it was unaired because the studio were suffering financially and, couldn't arrange what they needed to get it working. Boris Karloff says he was never paid for it. So, there you go. So it's also the clip I've got, which is on YouTube. It was presented by, I'm not sure he named himself, a different person who kind of opens it up before it moves on to Boris Karloff. And it says some, interesting things. But it's 58. This is pre-Twilight Zone. This is pre-Thriller. Boris Karloff's Thriller, say. In fact, it kind of reminded me of Thriller somewhat. Boris Karloff is always good as both a host and an actor. He's always a commanding and striking and charismatic presence, so that helps. And it was a solid series, and I'm looking at with interest because I'm actually seeing some British actors in some of the episodes, which is kind of unusual. British actors, I think, who would be known to Americans at the time. So maybe it was like a transatlantic thing. Now, other interesting point, it was produced by Hal Roach Studios. Hal Roach, most famous for Laurel and Hardy movies and shorts, right? So that is kind of cool. I like the vibe. Now this first pilot, this backdoor pilot, was called The Vestries. It's set on a ship, 1822, I think it is, a sail ship, crossing the Atlantic, I think it is. And a woman is there who is kind of starts insisting she sees a figure coming towards her and dreaming about it, and sort of says, he's trying to tell me something, or he's going to save me, or something. It's kind of unusual, and it is Boris Karloff in like a white garb, like almost like waterproofs or operating material. You know, it's kind of a bit hard to tell what he's wearing. But she then proceeds to get sick in her stomach. It's probably appendicitis. They give it a different name here, but it's probably something like appendicitis. But you know, these visions sort of trouble these visions she talks about are troubling to the crew. They're a bit worried. They think a bit superstitious. The deckhands are like, a woman shouldn't be on a ship. It's bad luck and all this kind of stuff. And eventually, I find on a chalkboard the message "Steer Northwest" is written on it, and they don't know who wrote it. They assume she may have wrote it when she's delirious. But they do indeed steer northwest because they're sailors and they're a bit superstitious. And they come across ice floes, which, is clearly is dangerous because they're going so far north. But they actually encounter people on it. And one of the people they find on it is a surgeon, who is played by Boris Karloff, the man she keeps seeing, who, fortunately, is able to operate and relieve her, what could have been a fatal condition. So it appears that she's having premonitions of a man who will save her. The chalkboard isn't explained, other than the captain asks him to chalk on the board "Steer Northwest," and he explains what's happened, and he says, and the message was written on the other side of the board, and when they flip it over, it's in the same handwriting. Steer Northwest is in the same handwriting, so that's weird. Now it's sold when it opens as kind of a story presented by Robert Dale Owen, who I think was a social reformer, and they don't give any context. I did Google this to try and find something about any stories this man wrote, but he wasn't a writer as such. He was a social reformer, so it may be an anecdotal story told, or it may be a real life instance or something. I couldn't work it out. He is famous for taking a voyage in cold water, so maybe it's an anecdote or something he'd heard or something like that. I feel like from those waters, I don't know. It doesn't really make clear. So an interesting one. And looking at some of the ratings, some of the other episodes are considerable. I'd put it up there with Thriller or some episodes of The Twilight Zone. It was quite entertaining. The one actor I wanted to mention was Torin Thatcher, who when I saw it, I thought, I know this guy, and I googled it. Yep, I know him because he's quite a striking actor. He's quite effective, charismatic. But he was basically the bad guy magician in The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and in Jack the Giant Killer, which are quite similar kind of feeling films, to be honest. And he's very good in those roles. I remember seeing him as a kid and really liking him. But he's one of those guys I just don't recall seeing anything else, and he's quite effective here. Playing it fairly seriously. He's not chewing the scenery. This is a straight down the line sort of solid piece of acting he's doing in his role. In fact, the entire cast was solid. I mean, sometimes these old dramas, they're pretty bad, but not in this one. It was fine. So actually, The Vestries is well worth a look. It is on YouTube. You can look up The Vow, The Vestries. In fact, the entire series is on YouTube. You can watch all 12 episodes if you so wish. Apparently, some of the episodes were reused in other TV or movies, just as like background, something playing in the background because the copyright wasn't an issue. I guess, I don't really know, or maybe they just got it cheap to be able to use the rights. But I thought this was solid. I really liked it. Again, The Vow, and this is the backdoor pilot, The Vestris, that originally aired on ABC's anthology show Telephone Time. So solid recommend for me. I really like this one. I might rewatch I might watch all of these episodes at some point. They're only 25 minutes. It was kind of charming because there was also the original ads were in, so you can kind of see some late 50s ads, American ads, advertising how useful the telephone is. I'm guessing this drama series Telephone Time was sponsored by was it Bell, the telephone company that had a monopoly in America. Seeing this ad it occurred to me that might be what Telephone Time was. They were the sponsors of Telephone Time. And that would explain the presence here as well, as it aired as part of Telephone Time. Anyway, I'm going to wind up there, but this one's got a big recommend for you. Very, very good late 50s anthology episode. I did enjoy this one. Anyway, time to go. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to